The room went silent, glasses frozen mid-air, eyes darting between me and him. And there he was, my husband of 50 years, smiling, like this was the best joke of his life, as he said those words, "Here's to my real wife." At first I thought I misheard, but then she walked in, and my entire world collapsed in front of 200 people. Before we continue, please write in the comments which country you're watching this video from. Enjoy the story. My name is Eleanor, and for 50 years, I believed I was the luckiest woman alive, married to the love of my life, Thomas. 3 beautiful children, a house filled with laughter and love. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of all our golden wedding anniversary. 50 years of marriage, 50 years of loyalty, devotion, and trust, or so I thought. The banquet hall was glowing that evening. Crystal chandeliers, golden tablecloths, and roses in every shade of red. Our children had gone all out for USA. Celebration with more than 200 guests. Everyone we knew was there. Friends, family, neighbors, people we hadn't seen in years, and me. I was radiant. A golden gown, pearls around my neck, and a smile that reached my eyes, because I had everything a woman could want. A loving husband and a lifetime of memories, at least. That's what I believed. The night was magical at first. Speeches, laughter, dancing. Thomas held my hand as we moved across the dance floor, his touch warm and familiar. Then came the toast. Thomas stood at the head of the table, glass raised high, his face beaming with pride. To 50 years, he began, his voice deep and confident. 50 years with a woman who stood by me through thick and thin. A woman who made me the man I am today. I smiled, tears stinging my eyes, and then he said it. "Here's to my real wife." The words sliced through the room like a blade. I froze. Everyone froze. And before I could even process what he'd said, the doors at the back of the hall opened, and she walked in, tall, elegant, wearing a dress, so white it glowed under the chandeliers. The room erupted in whispers. Heads turned, cameras flashed, and Thomas, he walked straight to her. I stood there, numb. As my husband, the man I spent 50 years loving, wrapped his arms around this stranger and kissed her cheek like she belonged. To him, gasps rippled through the hall. My heart stopped beating, and then Thomas looked at me, smiling like nothing was wrong, and said the words that shattered my soul. "Eleanor, meet Rebecca, my wife." I couldn't breathe. The room blurred, voices buzzing in my ears like angry bees. My knees wobbled, and for a moment I thought I might collapse right there in front of 200 people. "Wife," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Thomas, what are you talking about?" He didn't answer me. Instead, he slipped his arm round her waist. The stranger in white and turned back to the crowd. "Everyone," he said, smiling like this was some grand joke. "This is Rebecca. She's been in my life for a long time, and today I think it's time you all met." The guests erupted in whispers. Phones came out, cameras clicked, and me. I just stood there, frozen, as my world crumbled, like ashes in my hands. Finally, I found my voice. "Thomas," I said, louder this time, the words trembling but sharp as glass. "What is this? What are you doing?" He turned to me, his smile never faltering. "Eleanor, let's not make a scene." "Make a scene," I exploded, my voice echoing through the hall. "You bring her to our anniversary party and tell me not to make a scene." Gasps filled the room. Our children, our 3 beautiful grown children, stood frozen near the stage, their faces pale with shock. "Dad, what the hell is going on?" our eldest son Michael demanded, striding toward him. Thomas raised a hand calmly, as if he were the one in control. "Sit down, Michael. We'll talk about this later." "No," I spat, tears burning my eyes. "We're talking about this now." Rebecca stepped forward then, her voice soft but dripping with something that made my skin crawl. "Eleanor," she said, flashing me a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "you've been such a good wife to Thomas, really, but now it's my turn." My turn. Those two words slammed into me like a freight train. What do you mean, your turn?" I whispered, my voice shaking. She tilted her head, her smile widening. "You've had 50 years, darling. 50 years of his love, his life. But Thomas and we've been patient long enough." The room erupted in chaos. Guests whispering, cameras flashing, people muttering under their breath. "Thomas," I choked out, gripping the edge of the table to keep from falling, "tell me this isn't real. Tell me this is some sick joke." His eyes met mine then, and for the first time in 50 years, I didn't recognize the man standing in front of me. "It's not a joke, Eleanor," he said quietly. "I love her. I've loved her for a long time, and tonight I'm choosing her." My heart shattered. The pain was so sharp, so raw, I thought I might scream. But before I could say a word, Rebecca leaned in close, her lips brushing against my ear as she whispered something that froze my blood. "I'm not just here for Thomas," she murmured. "I'm here for everything you own." And then she straightened, that wicked smile plastered across her face. As Thomas raised his glass again like nothing was wrong. "Two new beginnings," he said. The words "I'm here for everything you own" echoed in my head like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The music had stopped. The laughter was gone. All that remained was a thick, suffocating silence as 200 guests stared at the train wreck unraveling before their eyes. Thomas placed his glass down and gestured to Rebecca with a smug smile. "Come on, darling," he said, pulling out a chair for her at the head table, my seat. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. 50 years of marriage, gone in an instant. But then I noticed something, a leather folder in Rebecca's hand. She set it gently on the table and slid it toward Thomas with a look that made my stomach twist into knots. "What is that?" I demanded, my voice trembling but sharp enough to slice through the whispers. Rebecca smirked. "Oh, just a little formality." Thomas hesitated, glancing at me for a fraction of a second, long enough for guilt to flicker across his face. Then he opened the folder, and my world shattered. The top page was unmistakable. A property transfer agreement, and not just any property. Our house, our vacation cabin, every asset we owned together. My name was still there, but it had a line. Through it and beneath it, Rebecca's name, no. The word slipped out as a broken whisper. My hands shook so violently, I had to clutch the back of a chair to steady myself. "Thomas, what have you done?" He didn't answer. His face was pale, his jaw tight, but he didn't deny it either. "Tell me this isn't real," I said, my voice cracking as tears welled in my eyes. "Tell me you didn't sign away everything we built together." Thomas opened his mouth, but Rebecca cut in smoothly, her voice oozing with triumph. "Oh, he signed it, Eleanor. He signed everything." Gasps rippled through the crowd like wildfire. Guests exchanged shocked glances, some raising their phones to record every second. I turned to Thomas, desperate. Why would you do this to me? To our family?" He finally looked at me then, and his words burned into my soul. Because I love her, he said quietly. No, I choked out. No, this isn't love. This is theft. This is business, sweetheart, Rebecca purred, cutting me off. And unfortunately for you, you're no longer part of it. Then she pulled something else from the folder. A court notice. My blood froze as I read the words. Petition for divorce. The room spun around me. 50 years of loyalty, of sacrifices, of building a life together wiped away in one cruel stroke. But Rebecca wasn't done. She leaned closer, her voice low so only I could hear. You think this is about love, she whispered, her smile sharp as a blade. No, darling, this is about winning, and I always win. Something inside me snapped. I straightened, my tears drying as a strange calm settled over me, because while Thomas and Rebecca thought they had destroyed me, they had no idea who they were dealing with, and if Rebecca wanted war, she was about to get one. I walked out of that banquet hall with my head held high, not because I wasn't broken. My chest ached, like someone had ripped my heart out and stomped on it. 50 years of my life, shattered in front of 200 people, but I didn't cry in front of them, not in front of Thomas, not in front of Rebecca, because they had no idea who they were messing with. That night, I sat alone, in the dark, staring at the empty side of the bed that used to be his. My tears had dried, replaced by something colder. Resolve. If Rebecca thought she could waltz into my life, take my husband, and steal everything I worked for, she had another thing coming. So I made a call to someone who owed me a favor by morning. I had her full name, date of birth, and the one thing she never wanted anyone to find out, her past. Turns out, Little Miss Perfect Rebecca wasn't who she claimed to be. She wasn't just some sweet woman who fell in love with my husband. She had a record, a long one. Fraud, identity theft, gold-digging her way through 3 previous marriages each, ending with her walking away richer, while the men walked away broken. But that wasn't even the worst part. She had a warrant out for her. Arrest, and Thomas had no idea. I stared at the file, my lips curling into the first real smile I'd had since that horrible night. Rebecca thought she was playing a game, but I just changed the rules. The next day, I put on my best black dress, painted on a calm smile, and walked right into Thomas's office. He looked up, startled. Eleanor, what are you doing here? Relax, I said smoothly, stepping inside and shutting the door behind me. I didn't come to fight. Rebecca was there, perched on his desk like a cat who thought she owned the house. Her smug smile faded slightly when she saw me. What do you want? She asked coldly. Oh, I said sweetly, setting the thick manila folder on the desk between us. Just to give you both a little gift. Thomas frowned, opening the folder, and then his face went white. What is this? He whispered. Rebecca snatched the papers from him, her hands trembling as her eyes darted across the lines of text. Where did you get this? She hissed. Oh, you know, I said casually, inspecting my nails. A little birdie told me all about your history, the marriages, the lawsuits, the fraud charges. Oh, and that pesky arrest warrant. Rebecca's mask cracked, her eyes blazing with fury. You wouldn't owe, but I would, I said softly, leaning closer. Because unlike you, I play fair, but I also play to win. Thomas looked between us, his face a mixture of shock and horror. Rebecca, is this true? Rebecca stammered, trying to find the right words. And then Thomas turned to me, his voice breaking. "Eleanor, I didn't know." I smiled coldly. "Of course you didn't. That's what makes her so good at this." Rebecca slammed the folder shut and shoved it back at me. "You think you can scare me?" she spat. "No," I said, my smile widening. "I don't want to scare you." I leaned in so close she could feel my breath on her cheek. "I want to destroy you." And with that, I walked out of the office, leaving Rebecca shaking in her designer heels and Thomas staring at the ruins of his own life. But this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning, because what Rebecca didn't know was that I had a plan, one that would take everything she loved and burn it to the ground. 2 weeks later, the world knew Rebecca's name, not for the reason she wanted. Her mugshot was on every news channel. Headlines screamed, "Socialite arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme." I watched the footage from my living room, sipping champagne. The same living room she thought she would steal from me, Thomas. He was sitting across from me, head in his hands, looking like a man who had aged 20 years overnight. "How could I be so blind?" he whispered. I tilted my head, my voice calm and cold. "Because you wanted to be." But what Thomas didn't know, what no one knew, was that I didn't just expose Rebecca. I destroyed her, because while the news focused on her criminal record and her arrests, something else was happening quietly behind the scenes. I had taken every asset she ever owned, every dollar, every property. How? Because Rebecca was greedy. She wanted my husband's fortune, and in her rush to claim it, she left a trail so messy, so sloppy, that all I had to do was pull the right strings. One call to the IRS, one anonymous tip to the bank about suspicious transfers, and boom, Rebecca's empire collapsed overnight. But I didn't stop there. Remember that property transfer Thomas signed, the one that cut me out of everything? Guess what? I burned it. Legally, I filed for divorce before he even realized what was happening. And thanks to a little prenup clause, Rebecca didn't know about, and the fact that Thomas committed fraud by trying to transfer marital assets, walked away with everything. The house, the vacation homes, the businesses, the fortune, everything. Everything. So, there I was, sitting on my leather couch, watching Rebecca being dragged into a police car, and Thomas, broken, humiliated, and penniless. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Eleanor, please. I made a mistake. I want us back." I stared at him for a long moment, then leaned forward and whispered the words he'd never forget. "You already had me, Thomas, for 50 years. And you threw me away for a con artist in a white dress." I stood, grabbing my champagne glass, and walked toward the door. He called after me, desperate, "Where are you going?" I looked back with a smile, sharper than glass, to start living my life. The life I should have had without you. As I stepped outside, the sun warm on my skin, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Freedom and power, because Rebecca thought she could steal my life. Thomas thought he could replace me, but in the end, I won. Before you go, tell me this in the comments. What would you do if this happened to you? And don't forget to share which country you're watching from.